Hi guys, welcome to About Homes. Today we have with us Studio 4000 and Smit sir with us. So we're going to talk about his projects and his residences. Welcome sir to our show.
You can stop calling me sir. But thank you very much.
I always feel like a student of yours. So
Well, thank you. But again, don't call me sir. It's okay.
so sir, સૌથી પહેલો I'm sure ઘણા બધાએ પૂછ્યો હશે આ question, but why the name Studio 4000? What is 4000?
Is it okay if I don't tell you? I mean, I'd like to keep it a secret.
What? No. Why is that? No, you have to tell us.
It's a really bad reason or not a great story. Actually, I was advised by my chartered accountant to give it a name. We actually started working in 2007-8. That's when we did a project and we had to be remunerated for the work.
Correct.
So I had to make a bank account. And he said, and I think the taxation rules are a little different to what they are now.
Correct.
And he said, if you give it a name where if you can show this as a craft or that kind of work, I can put you in a different, something of that sort.
Yeah.
And so I kept sort of not telling him, not giving him a name. He said, just give me anything. I just need to start an account and put it on this thing. And so my code numbers. I was 40th in my class in terms of my roll number, code number, and I joined in 2000 at SEPT. So my code number is 4000.
That is why.
I never wanted.
Well, no, okay. But sometimes you just need a name. So.
Then unfortunately it stuck, and now of course there's all these. It wasn't even such a fashionable thing to do, or at that point of time you didn't have so many firms which were studio or something.
Correct.
Nothing wrong with it, but it's just that.
Correct.
And now we are stuck with this kind of a name, but because then we started doing some government work, and then so now all the how do you say completion certificates are in that name, so we kind of
stuck with that. But when you named this, was like Khushbu ma'am a part of the firm? Or?
We no. Well, I mean, for the first year, two years or so from 2008 to 10 or so, I was working by myself, and I had one or two people who were helping with the projects. I had only two or three. Khushbu and I started working together because of a competition we did with a few other friends. It was a very large competition project. We won the first prize and kind of really enjoyed working together. And that's when after that we kind of started, we did two or three other which we didn't win, but we did two or three other competitions. And so that's how which is the other reason I didn't want this name, because, it just came when I was initially working alone. And now of course there's more people now in the studio. But it's stuck, and then
was she ever like, okay, now I've joined, we have to rename this?
Not at all. We are not at all. We don't think too much about name and those.
No, that's the way to go actually. I know one very interesting thing that I found. Tamari website ma there is a very good section which I love. It's called Introjects. If you remember.
Yeah.
So
I should. It's my website.
Correct. So can you talk a little bit about what Introjects are and how it like inspired you?
It's just a little play on the word project, which I think a lot about. It's something I like to have a conversation with the students also. It's so to project is to take something and to throw it, and throw it ahead or throw it into the future. So in some sense we are always so we architects think that's what I mean. We do this. We make projects.
Correct.
We take ideas and we make drawings and we put schemes together, and then something comes out of all of that. The other thing for us, as both Khushbu and me especially, is this idea of visiting or like physically visiting places, traveling to see architectural projects, different landscapes, towns, etc. to draw on site.
Okay.
This is a very important thing for us, and we really like doing this. And over a period of time, we've also realized or discovered for ourselves that this can become an incredibly formative exercise. It helps you look at things. You learn how to see, and then slowly you learn how to see differently. You learn how to see. And when you draw, and when you use different media to draw the same thing, or the same media to draw different things, and you start making these relationships with the work, and in the process you start identifying and discovering new things.
Correct.
And you make the project for yourself again when you draw it.
Wow.
It's a I'm making it sound.
No,
not all the drawings come out.
Beautiful way to put it.
No, yeah, but not all the time the drawings come out, and even failure is fun. So even a wrong sketch will teach you something.
Wow.
It's a remarkable thing, because in some sense we really like this. We see the architectural process to be also somewhat like that.
Correct.
That it's a kind of you do, and then you kind of reflect on what you've done. So you step back and look at what you've done, and then it kind of tells you what to. So sketching is that kind of on-site sketching is that kind of a thing for us. So when we were putting the work of the studio together, and we just thought that it might be interesting, coming back to your question, we thought it would be interesting to share some of these, the kind of work we do with the students, which is actually incredible learning for us. You learn a lot by working with the students, and so there's some work that we've done with the students, and there are these drawings that we make when we travel. So we thought that also says something about how we are and who we are as architects.
Correct. It has like inherent style that I can see in the sketches which goes along. But mare hi pucho that. So the entire process of sampling, which is like you go to a place, you travel, you like, architecture you have to experience it when you go to the building and you sketch it. How important is that for your practice, like to make new buildings?
Indirectly, it is important, like what I just said. I think, in some sense, I think the work is about the world, and you need to understand the world, and we don't know anything about the world. We always I always feel we know very little, which means we need to go out much more, meet people, visit places, try different cuisines, travel in different ways, and have strange experiences and encounters while traveling. Basically throw yourself into the world, and hopefully some learning will come out of that. So that is the indirect and the long-term kind of. More directly, we like going to site. We like to see the progress of the work. We do, for even small projects, we are sometimes doing possibly more than 100 site visits.
Wow.
For a really small renovation project. But we really like to kind of keep going, keep changing. And this is it's actually a really problematic part of, because a lot of people, I know a lot of people who don't do this, because when you change something, you go to site and you realize that.
Correct.
So two things happen. One is that some people claim that you give this impression that you didn't get it right earlier, so now you are A, and B, when you change something, the entire set, all the details,
everything changes.
All the services, everything needs to be looked at again.
Correct.
And the whole set has to be done. We do that. As a studio, we change, and we also have the humility to sometimes be very honest with our clients and say that, I had an idea, but I think we went last time and, it was evening and the light was falling in a certain way. We think that window should become bigger.
Correct.
For example.
Yeah.
And we change, and then everything will change, and the wall section will change, and all of that. So we take this on ourselves, and we like to. We are happy with the.
But as a client, let's say if we're doing a residence, as a client, I would always like, for example, if you're doing a residence, though, I would always prefer everything is planned, because a change that you make is a duration that is longer and will cost me more. So that is why I asked, like, is it necessary for a house to turn out well, or can you go pre-planned, like everything pre-planned, where nothing's changed?
So these two things are not exclusive of. So, let's understand this, because you need a lot of planning. We need careful study, observation, analysis. You need to understand the site. You need to understand and coordinate all the services and everything.
Correct.
We are very conscious when we are using materials. We don't want to do things badly. We don't like to break things on site. We want to build very responsibly, which means all the effort that you're doing in the studio, that taking that idea or that drawing and making it again and again and again and again. till it becomes, and only then you will release it to the site for construction. So this, when I say that we like to go and change, that doesn't mean we don't do all of this. I think this is a much bigger conversation, and I don't know if we have the time to do it right now, but I feel there is, and yet there will always be a gap between how the drawing imagines the architecture and how the construction on site, once it starts, there's going to be, there will always be a gap. There will always be a gap. What I meant to say is, as designers, we must have the courage and the humility to sometimes accept that there is possibly a better alternative.
Correct.
And then to do the hard work, go back and do the extra work to make sure that, the project benefits because of that insight you've had.
Correct.
That's come out of a site visit.
Yeah, that makes total
sense. That doesn't mean that you don't have all that rigorous kind of planning and preparation in the earlier.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the things that you change is also a lot more homework for you, as you said. Like, you have to plan
it's more work.
Yeah.
Sometimes the clients will say, oh, but you want to make this change. I've never asked for it. So don't ask me to, for additional remuneration or something like that. To which sometimes we'll have to say, fine, I mean, that's all right. I mean, let's do this. It's too important to not make this.
Correct. But yeah, what you're going to do if you see that there is a better solution that could be had. So coming back to the question of introjects and the sampling that you do, how I remember these two sketches very vividly. Ek to Villa Sove, Cabusiers. I loved that sketch, and and a visual was there, Fatehpur Sikri. So tell me about that, if you remember sketching, going there.
I do remember, but if it's so I've been to Fatehpur Sikri, I think 6 times in 25 years.
Oh wow!
And let's talk about Fatehpur Sikri, and let's not talk about Villa Sove.
Okay.
I think Fatehpur Sikri is it's an incredible classic project. Fatehpur Sikri, so the first time I went, I was in school. I was in 10th or 11th standard.
Correct.
And I went with some friends, and I just saw something. Typically, when you go and maybe we took a guide, I don't remember, who told us all these absolutely sort of, these fake stories about Raja Rani and all of that. And we just maybe went around and got back.
Yeah.
And then I went in. Then I went when I was in my second year of my architecture, and then I went a little later, and then recently in 2016 or 17 I took about a bunch of my students to see Fatehpur Sikri, and that was, I think, the 5th or the 6th time I saw it in 25 years.
Wow.
And the great thing about visiting a classic, visiting and revisiting a classic, is that it is there somehow as this moment in time, and it stays like that. Meanwhile, you are evolving and growing and doing things in your life. So the first time I went, I didn't even see it as architectural project. And then you go as a student, and then you go as a young professional, and then you go as someone who's started doing some work.
Correct.
And then after a few years, you've also built. So Fatehpur Sikri has columns, it has walls, it has roofs, it has brackets, it has plinths, and then you. In my last visit, you started making walls and columns and things in your own work.
Yeah, correct.
And then you go and see this, and then you are astounded at some another level only of what they've been able to achieve. At Sikri, for instance, I'm taken by, how wonderful asymmetries are created without losing the sense of the whole.
Wow.
And this is, I haven't seen this anywhere else. I mean, it's just absolutely
correct. But do you think there are like designs which are timeless, like Fatehpur Sikri, which you go every time and it is different?
Yes.
So in retrospect, since we are not talking about Villa Sove, I'll ask you about Sodhan Villa.
We can if you like. I mean, I just...
So I just wanted to compare. Now there is this, our traditional approach, and there is this, the modernist sort of architecture, which you also have some sort of a design in that. So when you go to a Sove or a Sodhan Villa here, do you have the same sense of timelessness, or is it different?
It's actually a really interesting question. And of course there are differences. And of course, at one level there will be, you're looking at something that comes from a different culture of sort of human relationships, materiality, and a different cosmology and a worldview.
Correct.
Versus, so when you're looking at, say, for example, like the Shodhan house vis-a-vis versus something like this. So of course there are differences and one has to understand those things. But something that both my partner and I really enjoy inhabiting is a world in which these kind of programmatic or this temporal, so that the fact that they are of different times
correct.
also dissolves a little bit. And we like to inhabit, and just because out of nothing else but sheer curiosity, childlike just desire and curiosity to be in this kind of a magical world in which something could be a work of the modernism from the first half of the 20th century, or something could be so for example something like Modera, which comes from the 10th and the 11th century, or a Sarkej Rosa, which comes from the 16th century, and a Shodhan house, which comes from the 20th century. In some sense, they also exist together for us, and it's this large unity of ideas, effects, architectural actions, shadows, textures, and that whole world that is so, which is not a political world, and it is not like, so it doesn't matter who made this, what did they believe in, what did they stand for, all that disappears or dissolves. There's also that space for us, which we really like. So you can have a small project can also be a classic, and a large project can also be a classic. A very recent project can also be a classic, and a very old project can also be. So they all coexist. No, all that is this one timeless, seamless kind of. Also, there's also that.
Correct. So when you let me come to now, tell me about your childhood home, like
childhood home
where you grew up. So I would.
It wasn't very nice.
Wasn't very nice.
Just a home.
So I mean, where was it? And
I mainly grew up in Ahmedabad only. I used to live in an apartment building, which was interesting because my father was an architect, and he had designed this apartment. So it was the topmost floor of that apartment. It had a penthouse and all of that. And because he was the architect, he could convince the builders to let him put like a steel bridge between something and something else. And
a home is a home. Like it's more to do with a feeling than an aesthetic. Probably is what I feel.
Spoken like a client. Yes and no and yes.
I'll tell you very specifically. I'll be very specific because see, your love for terrazzo and Kota stone is quite evident in your projects, like in your studio. Then there is Corridor House. Then there is I think Vindhyanaman House also has a lot of Kota stone, terrazzo, and the brass lining. So I was just curious.
Actually, that has not come from. There is this. We got a wonderful Karigar, Lalchand Kaka. He passed away unfortunately 3 or 4 years ago. Just a year before COVID, he passed away. And he used to come from Agra to do this in situ terrazzo.
So what karo?
He was an incredible man who was really. Of course, he was this master craftsman. He was the main Karigar for terrazzo, and. Actually, in situ terrazzo is a very complicated thing. In the sense that to get it right, you don't want batching, and especially if you're going to do with pigment, you need the right kind of big pigment, and your batching has to be perfect. Otherwise, it'll become spotty here, it'll be lighter there, darker there, and so on. So if you want it to be of a certain quality, then it has to be cured properly. There's a lot of. It's a very process intensive kind of a. Technique, and then we saw this man who was so disciplined, and we would get a call from him saying, when he's laying the copper, the dividers, he would call and say that this is I'm getting I have a problem in lining out and setting out of the strips as per your drawing. So we'd go to so what happened? He said the site is really far. said, "Kaka, आप करो ना कुछ." They said, "नहीं साहब, आपको आना पड़ेगा." So we'd actually drive all the way, go to the site, and I said, "क्या हुआ? देखिए 4 mm का यहाँ issue आ रहा है." And then we look at each other and we're like, "Oh my God, like he's calling us for 4 mm." But we also learned from him to not kind of, belittle his. Then we said, "अच्छा ठीक है, अब क्या करेंगे?" So we'd also then join him in his concern for that 4 mm.
4 mm का issue.
But he was an incredible man, and he's done all the earlier projects he'd done. So, and then it was fun to tell him that, and spend a lot of time with him for the earlier projects. I would tell him, "Can we lift this up?" So he said, नहीं ये सब क्या बोल रहे हो?
That is incredible. I love that.
So then I said, नहीं तो इसका तो मजा यही है ना कि अगर if it is this kind of
it merges with and becomes a furniture.
So I said, "Can you do this?" Then first he will say कि नहीं देखिए इसमें. And then we'd push him a little bit, and by that time we had some friendship with him also. He was incredible. Irrespective of how much work is left or not left, at 1:15 he will stop working.
Wow.
He will sit down, have his lunch from his tiffin box. Then he will rest. Only for 15 minutes. There's a way in which he would make his, he would spread a sheet out for himself.
Correct.
And you have to observe this man. Even in the way he would put out that sheet and rest 15 minutes after, there was some dignity and quality and, something even in that. Like he was just this. Then, and never more than 15 minutes, and then he will get up. So if you want to do some chai or something, you can go and come back. And the first time we were doing some of these things, we had to be at site because there are no drawings for these things. So we would actually literally go there. The mason is also there.
Wow.
He's setting this. So we are doing something. And then we saw that he got special tools to get that roundedness of to kind of, fashion it in a certain way. And then you give him these things and, "Can we lift this up a wall?" He said, "अरे गिर जाएगा, क्या बोल रहे हो?" I said, "काका ऐसे करे दो, ऐसे कुछ इसको ऐसे divide करके करे दो."
Correct.
And then sometimes, and also you have to listen. Sometimes you wanted to do something where it came against gravity, and he said, "This time it
नहीं हो पाएगा."
ये बिल्कुल नहीं होगा. So he would put his foot down, and then you listen to him also.
Correct.
I think this is since you brought it up here, I feel if there is some one of the great things about being in this part of the world and working as an architect in this part of the world, it is to have such encounters with incredible people and there are others. There's Ganpat Bhai, who's the master carpenter. We've been actually lucky, or I don't know what is the word, blessed actually to be able to have worked with him. And he's our teacher. He's drilled the discipline of how to draw, what drawing is required for what kind of work, what scale the drawing has to be. Don't do extra things also. If you give him extra 2 drawings, he'll say, "Yaar, aap jaruri nahi mare so yahan baisi na aapko ye paper fein dona tamara." He will say that to you.
Wow.
And so 15 years back when we started, this was something. And that we live in this culture of materiality and making, which is the great thing here, because we may not have the hardware and the technology that possibly is available or comes more easily to sight in the West or the other part of the world.
Correct.
But we have these incredible people who will have the patience, generosity.
But एक वो मस्त one client type question I was. So I have seen in this like architectural practice and other architects, they tend to પોતાની ટીમ હોય કે તમે જેમ તમારા ટેરેઝોવાળા સાહેબ છે અને તમારો મિસ્ત્રી છે, they hide those people because they think that their practice is dependent on those people. કે છુપાવીને રાખે કે ખજાનો છે કે એની સાઇટમાં જ કરે એવી રીતના. So do you think, because you mentioned it's great, like I have never seen somebody કારીગરોની વાત કરે and learning from them.
Well, that's not true. A lot of my architect friends will talk exactly like this, and I think it would be very hypocritical and in some sense a little wrong actually to not acknowledge the fact that without the generosity and the help and the great knowledge that all of these guys have in their hands,
correct,
projects wouldn't look the same. So that's one. But at the other end of the spectrum, let me also say this. Since you asked a client type question, let me give you an architect type answer.
Okay.
Which is this, let me frame this.
Take your time.
you know, not all the projects where they will give their best skills will necessarily, eventually, everything will not come together and become a great project. If you get what I'm trying to say.
Correct.
There is something that the architects also bring to a project which is invaluable. I mean, it's really important.
Correct.
And if a designer doesn't know, if she doesn't know what to do with a certain technique, or then either then also it doesn't come together, and that special feeling or that flavor of the project, which ultimately is what kind of is what is the main feeling,
Correct.
will not come. So there's also something that architects will.
Yeah, of course they of course bring.
So Ganpat Bhai will often tell me that it's when I do the carpentry with you for your designs, મને બહુ મજા આવે છે કારણ કે I see my work also in a certain way. And he will often come and tell me that when I worked for these other people, then એમની ડિઝાઇનમાં મજા નથી આવતી. See, they are also they're very intelligent, and he's also looking carefully at what you are doing.
Correct.
And they will obviously all, especially somebody like him, will be always very upset. Asu pachu alag vichitra કંઈક કરીને લઈ આવ્યા. But in his heart of hearts, and my feeling, I suspect, I think he likes it.
Correct.
કે આ વખતે લાયા છે કંઈક આવું આમ વાળીને આમ કરવું છે. So I think it's very complex, and it's a two-way. There's something that also designers will bring.
Correct, of course. Well, it's just the general tendency that I've seen, so I asked. But let's say when we talk about like coming back to a villa soe Sudan villa ke falling waters chair, all modernist architecture, why do you think they are so much like talked about as a residence ke badi jagah, and it's like a staple for any architecture student?
Well, I think the projects you are naming, and especially the kind of houses that stylistic and cultural movement that we refer to as modernism was interested in exploring. Two or three very interesting things were going on. Number one is that the house was reimagined by modernism as the vehicle through which a new way of thinking about architecture can be explored. And so whether it is, and in the great practitioners, the great modern practitioners, you named a few projects, you can see that they are not satisfied with doing again what has been done again for earlier, or repeating what has been done earlier, but they want to question the very idea of what does it mean to be living in the modern world. They want to begin with that original question. They want to go back to asking the fundamental questions.
Correct.
Right? So there are a lot of bad projects. There are a lot of bad modern projects.
Correct.
In the good ones, the ones you named, you can see that where those... so basically there is a spirit of experimentation.
Correct.
There is this idea of saying, we'll take certain formal ideas, we will have certain programmatic sort of ideas, and we're going to test them against each other.
Correct.
And see what happens. And where those experiments came out where and the ones where the experiments were successful.
Correct.
They enthrall us, and they astound us, and they absolutely surprise us with their ingenuity, their inventiveness, their imagination and creativity. I think for me that is... Also, there are other things. There is always in a good modern project, modernism is an attack on form. Yes, and you make something purposefully. You make something unrecognizable, so that it has to be, so that it ceases to be a representation of something, and then it opens up the way to recreate or make it new, or to make it again and make it into something new.
Correct.
So intrinsically, good modernism has this spirit of dynamism, adventure, of asking fundamental questions and seeing if a new solution or an answer comes.
Correct.
So it's wonderful. I mean, these projects they're great projects.
Okay. You've been to like most of them, if I know.
I haven't been to Falling
Waters, but so this brings me to the next question, which I'm very excited to ask. So, we're Gujaratis, right? And I have this theory કે આપણું લેન્ડ ઇઝ અ લિટલ ડ્રાય લેન્ડ, વી ડોન્ટ હેવ અ લોટ ઓફ વેરિએશન. તો એ કારણે ઇફ યુ લુક એટ આર વર્નેક્યુલર ડિઝાઇન, કપડાથી માંડીને ફર્નિચર, વી હેવ ગોટ અ લોટ ઓફ કલર્સ અને નાની નાની ઝીણી ડિટેલ્સ એ ઘણું બધું નાખી દે. વેર મોડર્નિઝમ ઇઝ લાઈક વેરી ક્લીન કટ, શાર્પ કોર્નર્સ. એન્ડ ટોકિંગ અબાઉટ યોર પ્રોજેક્ટ્સ, એસ્પેશિયલી આઈ રિમેમ્બર Castle and the Sun વાળું. As such, if you look, it's quite like a modern approach. Simple રાખ્યું છે તમે બધું, but you break it in a very particular manner. કે તમે હોલમાં જાઓ તો then there is this wooden pillar, old wooden pillar you've put. નાના મિરર છે, which is very ગુજુ. આખા ટ્રેડિશનલ હોમમાં, but you fits very perfectly. So why is that? Like was it like, is it necessary for a designer to be at home wherever he designs and પોતાનું થોડું ટેસ્ટ નાખવું કે complete modern house? We see a lot of projects, Atyana, especially Ahmedabad, which is just like Italian furniture, very clean cut corners, nothing sort of Indian in that.
Yeah, there's so many questions in your question, and I'm just thinking how to kind of address. I'm actually very fascinated with the early part of your question, and so let's just
correct.
I mean, the fact that, you know, we are all here in Ahmedabad or in this part of north central Gujarat, which is a dry place, and so I tell my friends who come, I have very good friends from Kerala and from West Bengal, and these are two very interesting, like diagonally
correct,
diagonally opposite in many ways to how we are out here in northern Gujarat. So landscape wise, food wise, clothing, climate, geography, politics, every which way.
Correct.
So but my joke what I'll often like, I'd like to tease them or taunt them with this, aapka kya hai? You know, you have this fish in the water, there's paddy in the fields, it's coconut on the trees.
Correct.
And they have this kind of, you know, and so you eat rice, fish, coconut, it's all there. And we come from a place of scarcity, right? And they come from abundance. I mean, these kind of, I don't know, I don't have a very large sort of, I don't want to say a very big thing out of this, but I'm actually very fascinated by these differences. And so for example, I tell my friends from, you know, that, you know, we have this somehow built into us, this idea of sort of using resources very sparsely.
Yes.
And not wasting, making much out, trying to do a lot with very little, because we were trained like that. No, we had very little.
Correct.
But somewhere I have a sense that one reason why, if you look at architecture and not just architecture in the 20th century, but even earlier, if you look at the Gujarat Sultanate architecture, if you look at projects like Rani Sipri's mosque, if you look at Sarkej Roza,
correct.
If you, I mean, those kind of projects, or even if you go further back and look at Modera, and I think they had nothing else. And we had to do whatever we had to do with this artificial thing called architecture.
Correct.
We didn't have, also we did not have great music and dance traditions like some of those.
Yes.
We have our own sort of course, music is, there's music everywhere.
Correct.
But no great sort of such, unlike in the south in many places where someone's learning music in every household.
Correct.
Or learning dance in every household. We didn't, if you look at the great filmmakers, the writers and the poets, they've come from
these two areas.
These kind of, but the architects have come from.
Yeah. We put everything into.
But the architects have come from here.
Correct. Adalajni Vav, if you look at it, it's just a well, but beautifully done back then.
So I'm really. This is not to say that. So now we are done forever, and now we have chinta karne ki zarurat nahi hai. We need to keep doing much more. But I think that's what we had, and both my partner and I really like the fact that Ahmedabad was this place. Even, and I think the fact that Gandhi was here and that he taught this city how to make institutions. Like, because when you don't have these traditional sort of cultural, these cultural traditions are not there. In the absence of all of that, he said, okay, we get together and do something. And he would start Vidyapit like that. He would start other things. So, and I think that has kind of strangely stayed and trickled. And so I think people here are very good at getting together and just starting something. It's because originally kuch hota nahi hai. I mean, there's not, weather's bad, you can't go out. तो ठीक है, चलो भी इकट्ठे होके कुछ करते हैं. So which is why I think all these great institutes like all, your NID and your CEPT and your IIM and your MICA and your ISRO,
everything is
it all happened because we didn't have anything else.
Correct.
So I really I don't know if we are still living in that Ahmedabad, and if we are still that city, and I'm not how do you say, I don't want to gloat about it or something, and not in that way, but I'm taken by the fact that it's a lesson for us, like all of us.
Correct.
Like how to think about our. So that's that part of your question. I'm sorry, what was the other?
The other half was it, is it necessary for, like, if you're building a residence or maybe any other structure, is it important to have an element of where the building is? Like you've done it in your houses, residences, very crucially, it'll appear as like a modern thing, but break it in a way where it has those traditions.
So, this is a really tricky question also, because, sometimes I feel, let me put it like this, like we do not like the kind of things that people do in the name of tradition, that people do in the name of local material, local craftsmanship. Something about sort of exploiting and using it as it is, without question, without inquiry, without internalizing and understanding it in your own way. To us, it doesn't. It seems to that extent we love the modern world.
Okay, got it.
But we do feel, and in our own way, that there are some larger abstract relationships, which for us are coming from two places. They come from deep cultural relationships. So which have a sense of the timeless.
Correct.
So I've seen actually even in very posh homes for very well-to-do clients, they will want that there's a place where you take off your footwear and you're going to use the project bare feet, where you are not going to wear shoes into the house.
Correct.
Think about it. This is a remarkable condition that only Indians have. Designers will have to.
Correct.
Nowhere else in the world, in Italy or wherever in some other, or Europe or America, they will not ask, chappal kadi na ghar hamara. Now, can I as a designer take that as a condition and do something to the floor that recognizes that there is this cultural need, that people like to walk or sit on the floor, or walk, I haven't seen, or rather, outside of South Asia, I've not seen people take so easily to sitting on the floor. Across South Asia, I've seen this in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, elsewhere. And isn't that something? So if the architecture can acknowledge or recognize that by doing something, then it is a meaningful thing to us. We don't want to accept this as a kind of a... Similarly, so one is the cultural relationships, and the other is geographical relationships. And for example, and this is also where visiting projects and sketching and all this becomes, the same sun rises and casts shadows at Modera, at Sarkhej,
correct,
at Shodhan House, at the School of Architecture building, and even some project that we will do. For so I'm not trying to put now whether you like it or not. This is how it is.
It is, yes.
Which means when you go to those projects, then in the good ones, there are wonderful geographical relationships that the project is making with landform, with the sun, with the sky, and so on and so forth. So when you say that, does it have to belong to a place, or can it be? The answer is no. There's no direct or clear answer to this. It has to be both, and especially in today's world, I think if you are going to, even if it has to continue some of these traditional ideas, they have to happen with a lot of criticality.
But if I say, let's say, a client comes to you and he's like, I have this plot of land on Tindubon Road. I want a European villa. That is the requirement. That's the line, and you have to just build on that. Would you take that sort of approach? Completely out of context, a European villa wouldn't. People still do it.
Yeah, so usually, let me be honest with you and tell you that if it is so specific, if the clients have, because one of the things we will tell them is that you can open any magazine or, just go to the British Library or wherever and just get a book on European villas or whatever, French chateaus or Swiss villas or whatever you like.
Correct.
उसमें प्लान भी होगा, सब कुछ है, आप हम रख के कर सकते हैं. So इतना, if it becomes so specific that European house, so and if there is no exploration or there is no what is the point? In fact, we would tell them that you are wasting your resources, your time and your money. You don't even need an architect. If you're so clear. You should just give the plans to a contractor, and nobody actually says that also. Let me say that actually we've been lucky to have incredible clients who don't come like this here. And I think sometimes we imagine that clients are actually very intelligent.
Oh, really?
I feel they know when they come to a certain kind of a practice. They also know why they are going there. So they are very, very intelligent. A good project is not possible without this kind of a client who will not speak in our language and but she or he has this innate understanding of what is being attempted. Without that understanding, and they will not let you even do the nice things that you could have done.
Correct.
So but yeah, if it gets so specific, then we'll have to say that maybe we are not good for this. Kind of.
Hey, which brings me to, because it's a specific question regarding to this. Your residences have a very specific colors that I've seen. If you look at it from a top view, it might seem like you use bold colors, and that is amazing. Like, you don't shy away from it, and it is very intelligently done.
Thanks.
Yeah. But if you look at, let's say Corridor House, got a maroon sort of theme going on, and Trapped Lakes is like a blue sort of thing. Castle in the Sun is yellow. So how does this color palette and these colors, bold colors, come from?
Actually, I never thought about it like that. And now that you're putting it this way, I'm happy you liked it.
Oh, it's amazing.
No,
usually,
do you know this whole thing that there is this whole argument that Western Europe is very scared of colors.
Correct.
And for us to even have the conversation in this way, where you and I, wearing the kind of clothes that we are wearing, we'll step out of the studio and we'll go and we will see people wearing saris and dresses and kurtas and everything. And हम कहाँ हैं यार, हम कहाँ जीते हैं? Or in our part of the world, I don't think we even think. And so one is that whole thing, and I think I can't recall where I read this or where I was listening to something, but there are these African, originally from Africa, they were two designers who had to do a pavilion of representing their country, and I think I saw it at the Venice Biennale, and their idea was to use lots of color. And in some sense, kind of, just have tell this well said. So the thing is, a lot of our ideas of what is good design come, unfortunately, from that one part of the world, which is Western Europe. Yeah. Right? All the magazines are there, all the big publications, and all the books will come from there. So now it becomes, whether we like it or not, a default, this template, ke yaar, aisa thoda clean. And white. And
yeah, exactly.
That whole. It can also be nice. It's very nice, and we look at everything. But I don't think. We're cutting a long answer short. And to quickly go to what you are saying, we're not conscious like that. But now that you put it like this, I'm thinking that we like to use in the good projects we've seen by interesting architects, and you can use color as a very important spatial a layer that creates a certain kind of a spatial experience. And you can almost use it if done well. I don't know if we do it so well or not, but we attempt to, whenever we do, to use it in order to serve a certain spatial experience, or Correct. So, for example, to use it if a space is becoming too long, then can this? So it's like that last layer you have
to make it more interesting.
To make it more interesting.
Okay. Sorry to cut you, but is there always a justification to whatever you do, or could you be like, मजा आवे, सरस लगे, मतलब मैं कह रहा हूँ, is that also a reason sometimes?
Mainly that is the reason. And I think the most important thing is to become to not become self-conscious when you are.
Correct.
So we don't talk like this when we are in the तू आओ हमारे यहाँ तने वो स्टूडियो में तो हम मजे करते हैं यार, कुछ भी होता है, and there's all these jokes I can't even tell you right out here. So of course not. And so there are energies in the office that, so for example, we have Honey in the office, and she will only do something in a certain way. And she's playful in a certain way.
Correct.
We have somebody like Shivani who is a little more serious person, and her work will be. So there are also, the team has a certain energy, and who's working on what project. Ultimately, it's all of that coming together, no? So, and in that we try to not become to not always have this justification or reasoning.
Like architecture.
Later on, of course, when you're discussing the project, like we are discussing right now, then it's a different thing, but otherwise...
Correct. But then it is interesting because you also teach this course like building language and expression. So if it is very subconscious, and if you think about it on a later stage, how do you teach to a student ke language and expression keem build karvi? Tamari potano taste.
Okay, let me just correct one very important and very absolutely what I would say is a wrong thing, which is you'd never teach.
You never teach?
No, this is not possible. This can't be taught.
Wow.
We were also not taught. Actually, a lot of architectural education, this is my view, and this is how we were trained also by teachers. They never sat us down, ek mudda lakho tame, ke shu hoy, okay, evu na hoy, amaki evi vastu na hoy. Some teacher will come and say something, like, and then he'll go away. And then you are like, yaar, kya bol gaye yaar, iska kya karne ka? What did he say?
Correct.
And of course, there's so much learning by doing, and then it's a plastic art or a plastic thing, no? You realize it's not right, correct it, keep going, iteration after iteration. So one is that there's no such teaching or anything like that. I actually like setting up the exercises and that the students have to undertake.
Okay.
Because I'm also thinking that is where the fun is, in setting up of the exercises. And then, of course, having those conversations with the students where you're not telling them what to do or what to learn, but somebody is designing something, some cafeteria one student is designing, and you're having a conversation about, yaar, hum khane ko kaise dekhte hain? Wow. Then out of that small conversation, some design about how a kitchen can be, or how a wash in a store can be, and how the dining can be, and like that will kind of come out. And so this is an incredible process, which is about, of course, it's very rigorous, and you have to, but it also has a tremendous hope in it. This is an act of like you're hoping all the time. Hope is so central to all learning, no? Like you are thinking also sometimes, I'll be honest with you, you're thinking ke yaar iske sath ye baat karu ke nahi? Will this person understand what? Person is also saying ke yaar ye main sunu ke nahi? Ye kya bol raha hai? And there comes a moment when both parties will hope against hope and hear each other out or do something, or somebody will draw and he said nahi pranam kariye to.
Wow.
And uska fir wo kuch hota hai ya nahi bhi hota hai, and mostly nahi hota hai kuch. But when it happens, then it's a lot of fun. And in the process, I am being very selfish. I am doing this for myself.
Okay.
The person who benefits the most out of that teaching exercise is me.
Wow.
I like it. I am, and of course I enjoy. And if somebody finds something useful or beneficial at the end of the process, I'm very happy for it. But that's not why I do it.
Okay.
I'm being very honest. I do this for myself. Wow. I learn a lot to immerse yourself and to kind of share some whatever little bit experience and ideas with the students, and so that they can imagine and reimagine and dream these things for themselves. And sometimes you get a little glimpse of that, and it's wonderful. But वो main चीज़ नहीं है. Main चीज़ है मुझे कुछ मिलता है. I get something out of this for myself.
I have never heard a teacher say this. This is a very unique take.
First, I'm not a teacher again. Please stop calling me a teacher and all of that. But anyone who I feel jo imandari, who honestly and will, if you really ask, no, they will. I'm being honest.
Achha, and so now, so language is expression, right? So let's say if you have a particular taste in a design and a style that you have. So, but when a client comes to you, as an architect, do you keep that intact or do you flow with what clients' flow and thought process is?
So it depends. Again, it's not fixed. So first of all, so I'll tell you, if you tell us that if you tell any architect okay, you have a style, and if they are the right thinking type of architects, they'll be very sad. They'll feel very sad. उनको बड़ा दुख होगा कि यार अच्छा आपने तो हमें ये ऐसे बना दिया, ऐसा type का बना दिया. You think we are like this kind of architects?
I'm not saying that.
No, I know, but I'm just saying. So now we are very conscious of this, and so we have learned to. I'll tell you something a little later in this conversation. So one is that we are very conscious of this thing that this very easily having a particular way of working or a style can very easily become a trap. It has some advantages also. It helps you sometimes also do sustained inquiry.
Okay.
If you're going to jump around and dance each project in a different way only, then you are not taking anything from a previous experience or an exercise into the next one.
Correct.
So you need a little bit of both. This has to be a way of working, whether to call it style or not, I don't know. That must remain. There must be some constant. There must be constants, yes.
To the
and then obviously because every client is different, every site is different, the requirements are different, and their aspirations are different. We have realized for ourselves that there's an other possibility or another alternative is to always accept, as I was saying earlier, that there is something that this person knows about the world, about the project, about everything that we should also make space for.
correct.
So, as I was saying, I will tell you something. So, I'll tell you something. We've never, in the last 5 or 6 years, we haven't fallen out with a single client.
So what karo?
And I can tell you this, we never say no also. If somebody comes with a requirement, I want a lilac bathroom. કંઈ વાંધો નહીં તો આપણે સારું કંઈક પછી if it is a really bad suggestion then I'll sit like this and like શું બોલો છો really you want this, it won't look ના મારે કરવું જ છે તો સારું તો now what has happened is that the client has a very sort of is very stubborn with this requirement.
Correct.
Sometimes I feel we can also be like that, and then that's when they say સારું ભાઈ તારે આવી રીતે તમારે એમ કરવું તમે કરી લો આ રીતે કરના. So it doesn't matter. What is interesting is that we never fight. We don't, and I don't think there is any requirement or suggestion that the real why we are required really is to, even if there is a freak idea or a thought or a suggestion that does not naturally belong to the kind of language of the work, then it is our challenge and responsibility and tasks. That is a real fun thing also that we do. As architects, how to bring that strange or that freak idea within the fold of the work.
Correct.
And give it dignity.
So I want to talk to you about the most talked project of yours.
It's like, okay.
But one very specific thing, because I'm dying to ask. So of course, Aloha Residence, Tamaruji. What I loved about that project is, like B.V. Doshi Sahib also said, ki one of the most important part of architecture is light. And if you look at Aloha, Garma, light is like the central part. And as far as the pictures that I saw, my curtains jo hai nahi. I'm not sure if they were added later, but how did you do that? Convincing the client?
No, it's there are curtains. Some of the places there are there. Okay. We've designed them to kind of go away.
Oh wow!
So you don't see them.
But it is light is the central part in that project because all the openings there are quite massive.
For that project, we found out one or two very interesting things. We found out that the lower part of the site, so the project is on a mound and it kind of drops and then continues and becomes a kind of a.
Correct.
But the upper level, the upper part of the project, upper part of the site where ultimately the project was located, was actually a kind of a place where nobody went.
Achha.
And when we first encountered the site, the feeling I got is that this is a patch on the earth, like global earth, where nobody has walked.
Wow.
Like ever since the earth was formed, it's almost like that.
Yeah.
We don't know, but I'm just thinking, it's so far out in the middle of nowhere. So we went back and we were like, यार क्या करेंगे यहाँ पे? And so we worked. We tried to only work very sensitively. And some of the other things are very interesting. So of course, light. I mean, I'm glad you kind of liked it, but actually the construction was has some very interesting stories that you can't know from the pictures. I know that project has been published in a few places, and it's. But for example, we never used a JCB on that site.
So what karo?
The entire work has been done, and we actually had to get the contractor to find the right kind of karigars. Do you know there is a special kind of a karigar, and their expertise is at digging for foundations, where they will dig only as much as required and not even a couple of inches extra.
Wow.
So we had to do the whole thing, and then in some of the precarious parts of the landform, we had to even do a kind of a pile, which was actually bored manually on site.
Oh.
Because that big tractor couldn't go up on that.
That is insane.
I'm telling you, and it took a little extra time also because the project is on a mound and it was a very steep slope, and the approach road only got done right at the end.
Okay.
So all the material would get unloaded below, and it had to be manually taken up. So I mean, everyone from all the people, all the team, contractors, everyone was in on this idea that we should not disturb the site, and we've been very careful so that the original landform is just, it's there and it's not lost because of construction. So these are some of the things that we learned a lot.
Wow.
And this is not something you see in pictures. Other stories, I'm talking about, there's this man called Sashi, who was the main centering karigar. So he's it was a remarkable thing. We made 2-3 drawings for this guy to do. And he didn't understand only. And the first set of, when he started doing the shuttering, the formwork and the shuttering, which is
the windows are you talking about?
No, shuttering is the when you are casting RCC, it is that surface on which you are going to throw the mix.
Correct. Okay, got it.
So the shuttering, he started bending the timber pieces out of which the RCC was going to be for the roof.
Correct.
And we told him, now how to explain to him what is a hyperbolic paraboloid? That it's a curve made out of straight lines.
Correct.
This man is from northern Bihar. He's not getting. And I said, देखो drawing में, देखो ये तो सीधा line है, आप समझ नहीं, इसको खोलो, ये ठीक नहीं है. And it wasn't going anywhere until one day I thought, what if told him to come to office. To Ahmedabad. He took a rickshaw and came to Tempo. He came to Ahmedabad. And we had a model of the roof that we showed this guy. He looked at it and everything, and immediately he realized that I need to set up my periphery and then have these pura kaam dori se hoga. Basically that's what he realized, so that all your lines will have to be straight lines.
Correct.
That's when he's also by that time become a good friend with us. Sashi tells me that his ancestors actually used to build boats in along the Kosi river and once he saw the board model and he saw those lines, he went and then he said, okay, now I've understood this game. So when he set out the periphery he set it out.
Correct.
He called us and said, come to site and check. So he said, ऊंचा नीचा कुछ करना है? I said, क्या बोल रहे हो? He said, I can now.
Wow.
You tell me if you want some changes. I can. He figured it out.
Insane.
And my thing to him was that when you are doing timber shuttering, it has to be done really well.
Correct.
So I said, and what happens is if it's not done well, when you will cast, so all this water from the slurry will leak out and you will get honeycomb. And I said, मैं नीचे खड़ा रहूँगा. So he said, नीचे खड़े रहो. तो आपके कुर्ते पे not a spot of the slurry will fall on your. And I mean, and then he will do this, and then in the morning, on the day of the casting, he did a little puja.
Okay.
And all of that, and he broke
the
nariyal, and I'm there. I'm not a very. I'm looking at all this, and it was for him.
A very grand.
He was not making this. I mean, for us or for contractors. He was making it for. He was making it for God. And I mean, એટલે એ ટાઈપનું ઓલમોસ્ટ કેવા લોકો છે યાર. I was astounded કે યાર उसको he is just a कारीगर.
Yes.
लेकिन he did a little एक अगरबत्ती he
so
did.
That is insane. I've never seen
and then
that.
throughout he's the centering guy. So while they are casting, he doesn't need to be there. He stood and he will guide them and amam karo.
Wow.
I mean, ये मुझे ज़्यादा interesting लगता है. And I mean all the stuff that you can't see in the picture.
Yeah.
And we learned so much by.
I'm sure. It's a complex project.
Yeah, I mean, but बहुत मजा आ गया.
હવે સાહેબ the essential question જેની માટે તમને બોલાવ્યા છે. What do you think about wood as a building material?
It's very good.
Everyone should use it. Yeah.
I mean, we like it.
Okay, and especially like you.
No, but I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we don't have such a, how do you say, like there is, there are some practices which will say that this one material or this one technique, we don't have that. Yeah. We don't have that. So we love working with plaster also, for instance.
Correct.
And like a good plastered project. It's very difficult to do and it's also a different challenge.
Correct.
Because sometimes the kindness of the exposed material is so much there that one kind of forgets that. If you can do something with plaster and still make it into, now for example, that's a different kind of a challenge.
Well, like on a technical point of view, because like Ahmedabad being a tropical climate, how do you think wood actually works? I mean, આપણે જે લોકલ કે ચડી જાય છે લાકડું. Do you think if that is possible?
You have to do it. First of all, you have to select good. I mean, the appropriate kind of wood has to be. It's critical to have good carpenters who will understand, because I mean, we can see the section, we can enjoy this, and we can many things. But the person who's going to ultimately fashion that piece of wood has to know कि ये तेल तो नहीं निकल गया है, and whether it will not warp, etc., and whether seasoning has happened properly or not. For example, from the master carpenter that we've kind of worked with, he's taught us to look at the section and identify if this has come from a young tree or a mature tree.
Wow.
So he will say કે આમ મૂકીને પછી એની પર પેપર મૂકીને જો આ આટલા ઝાડમાંથી જ નિકળ્યું છે. So he said this is not a good wood, for example, like that. So
correct.
And little bit we do all this and all, but the truth is we will rely on his judgment and his wisdom to kind of. So you need good people to kind of, and then you have to do the details in the right way, depending upon whether it is since you're very interested in working.
Correct.
So I mean, this. I mean, it has to be seasoned properly.
Correct.
You have to treat it properly. So you have to all the rules and protocols of working with the material. You have to.
But લાકડું જોરદાર મટીરિયલ છે.
છે બિલકુલ જ છે, તો કોઈ શંકા જ નથી.
Now I have like one question for probably our young viewers, hopefully થોડાક young માણસોએ જોયા. Like let's say if somebody is starting a very fresh new practice, how do you find clients? Like નવા clients તમને કઈ રીતના આવે છે?
I don't know, man. I wish I knew the answer. And Tanmay, we do very few projects. We like to do whatever we do. We like to do it very carefully. We don't. I think we don't sleep well, all of us in the studio. If we take on some le lete yaar dekha jayega, and then all kind of terrible things are happening where it's not properly done. I think everything is we don't like to do like that. In that sense, we are also not hungry for like a lot of work or. Having said that, we do definitely we do hope that interesting programs and interesting challenges by way of different kinds of projects we'll have an opportunity to work on them. So first of all, and secondly, this is the one the answer to this question I wish I knew. We have very few projects that we work with. I don't know. So sometimes there are friends. And there are people who will kind of. So my father was an architect and my sister was a dentist. And at one point she wanted to make her own clinic. And so she needed an architect. Who did she go to?
Your brother.
My father.
Oh, your father.
Yes. So she went, and then he started, and I'm looking at this and I said, fine. I mean, and she thought, of course, he's more experienced.
Yeah,
and
of course.
So he started doing something, and then one day she said, this is what he's doing. I said, it's not good.
Wow.
So, charity and theft begin at home. So I snatched his project and I told my sister, you need a different kind of
different taste to
Mari joda kar. And then of course, and my father wasn't very happy. We would often have, he's no more, but he was like, oh, acha, tu karwana. So the funny thing is that we did it and it came out, and she said, why don't you go and see a few projects? Thoda clinics jo na kewa. So we went and saw, and they all looked the same, kind of same, one thing, this white painted with this severe clinical kind of clinic, this space where, So I told her that, can we do something? Can we try out? So we in that project, I had no experience or very little experience. I had worked with a senior architect and had some very little. But we said, what we'll do is we'll have these curving kind of brick walls, and we'll use painted glass, and we'll have an epoxy floor, and we'll use teak wood, and we'll do everything that your standard, typical clinic does not have. Wow. Which, and I said, we will not do out and out transparencies where there's too much of glass everywhere, and so you're sitting in the waiting room and they're drilling into somebody's teeth at that side of the glass. You can see the discomfort the person is going through, but not hear the sound. So glass can be a very eerie thing. So I said, we will not use glass. We'll actually use opaque brick partitions. And she's like, it's a small space. So I said, even then, we'll act like we have a lot of space.
Correct.
And we'll do a thick 4.5-inch brick wall where required. So it eats up. Otherwise, you do an aluminum partition, you can do in 50 mm also.
Correct.
And she was not convinced, and then sort of convinced her and did something, and it just came out. So the funny thing is that a lot of our friends would come and see it, and we did 4 clinics after.
Wow.
So a lot of work comes like that.
Through that.
To answer your question. But boss, I'm really the bad person to ask this because I have no idea. We do some things, and sometimes we put our work out there. Aisa kuch nahi hai that we have.
But do you wait for the right client? Like, would you say?
Dude, we don't have that choice most of the time.
Okay.
We are not there yet as a studio, as a practice. I think we are very young as a practice, and but we have said no sometimes to, and this kind of connects to what you were asking earlier. When the clients came with very rigid, very specific things, and we said, there is nothing left to do here.
Correct.
So in spite of the fact that we are not like sort of full of projects and flooded with projects or anything like that, we'd still say no. Correct. If there's so I don't know. I think our thing is we are not even hungry for like a lot of projects or becoming this success or anything like that. We like to do small things, big things, whatever. We are right now doing couple of projects. We are doing very large projects, and we like to do them well, and it's okay. We are not in a hurry for.
Correct.
So I don't know. I don't think I'm an old person. So I don't want to give advice, but don't be in a hurry is what I would say.
Got it. Just a couple of more questions,
Please,
and then
sure.
I'll let you go. Thoda khajish hai. So you have a very young child also now. So how has that affected your practice?
But we don't work on alternate Saturdays.
Actually, our question मारे खुशबू मैम ने पूछा था, पर ये छे नहीं.
She parents are leaving for London, so she.
Okay, of course. But so that's why this question is to you. How has that affected? Like, does it drastically change? Are you looking at things differently now?
So we do 2 things, and I can't answer on her behalf because I can't claim that I understand what she feels and experiences, and that only she can. So I can't speak on her. We do 2 things. One is that Sahan is always in the studio.
In the studio, wow.
Yeah. And he has his own little desk where he does,
like a mini desk?
No, it's a regular desk, and the stool is a little taller, so he can sit there. And he's got his crayons and his colors, and he has his own stationery.
Wow.
He can sit there and hang around. He's made good friendship with everyone in the studio.
So
because we have sometimes my mother's here, and she's at home, and she can, but half the year she lives in the US. My sister,
wow.
so
Nice.
she's not. And then there's no one to, so he just hangs out with us. And I mean, we happily take him to site visits.
Wow.
I've tried taking him to Sept when I have a class or something, and they have a really nice crash. So, but that also, and he generally hangs out in the class.
Wow.
So if I'm doing a he comes
In the
with
class
me.
in Sept?
Yeah.
So acha.
He just sits somewhere and keeps scribbling something. And site visits we have done, because where do you leave him if you have to go to a
Correct.
site?
It's a very demanding job also. You have to go there.
No, yeah. I think this also for me it is. I mean, for us it is a little. I think this should become the practice, and everywhere the kid should go. I feel.
I mean, I'm just imagining myself. My parents were architects, and who abadi jagah rakhalto. I would have like the best time. Different things to do.
Yeah. Oh, so recently we had to go to the model makers workshop. We were getting some scale model done. So he went there and he just completely knocked himself out there with the drill and that. He's super fond of these tools.
So acha.
So, and he refused to leave. So we had to literally pick him up and drag him out of the workshop. Because jayez nahi. So,
Oh, that's amazing.
but so it's,
Okay. Now I've got a sort of a controversial question, and this is like, we'll keep it the last question. So Agadash, if you don't want to answer, we'll cut it right here. So this profession, because like now we've been in this for 2-3 years now, we find somewhere it is plagued in terms of the commission part of the architect. Ke clients always have this distrust. Ke akho budget tamne na ke and hoy to yani always this distrust of ke vendor પાસે લઈ જાઓ અને કોટ મને આપો ને of course.
Yeah.
So do you think this is quite prevalent, or now it's like designers don't do it?
I think it is quite prevalent.
Oh wow.
I know it is quite prevalent.
Damn.
And it is in fact giving everyone and all of us in the profession a really, we are just, anyways, there is a great distrust and suspicion of architects. We are generally seen as slightly weird, as people who kind of exist on the borderlines of, a conventional, shared and acknowledged and accepted wisdom. And it's important for us to be there, no? In these spaces where if we have to think differently or try something out or innovate or anything of that sort, we have to inhabit and be. So anyways, they are quite suspicious of us and like and it's very difficult for people to generally trust architects. On top of that, when these kind of when this kind of the word goes around and people realize that architects are also up to these kind of things, it's certainly not a good thing, and it doesn't bring any good reputation or it's a difficult thing. We have to tell our clients that, for example, in our case, I have to say 2-3 things. I said one is that I've had a very good upbringing. So we have incredible values that are both my partner and I, Khushbu and I, our parents have given us in their own way. So we just simply can't bring ourselves to participate into. I don't want to judge anyone. Quite frankly, architects are also severely underpaid, exploited.
Sometimes, yes.
Let us also accept that a large part of construction and architectural practice is very exploitative in our country, and it starts right at the top. This guy exploits the person below him. He exploits the architect. Architect aane kare. And that cycle of exploitation we have to break.
Correct.
I think even frankly nothing good work doesn't come out of that kind of.
Correct.
Architects are also exploited, and in turn they exploit. Then it kind of trickles, and so I don't want to judge anyone. We are not like some saints or anything like that. It's just that I must acknowledge this and also say openly that we've had the good fortune and the privilege of coming from a family and upbringing and a background where we don't need.
You don't need.
And it is certainly not part of our value.
Correct.
So I have to tell my clients that whatever you pay us is what we are earning out of this project, boss. So, and it's not, I'm judging no one, and everyone can decide what they want to do for themselves. But for us, it is like that. And I don't think there's any controversy here.
But it's also very interesting because architecture, it's the only profession where you work with the client. It's like a collaboration. પણ છેલ્લે નામ ક્લાયન્ટનું આવે હોમમાં. You have worked on it also, but then you're giving your artwork to. Do you think that is?
बहुत अच्छा है वो. But you want to live with it for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that is true. They have to.
It's good. No, it's a great thing. Yeah. And I'll tell you what. Yeah. I think slowly we've come to realize in the studio, all of us, that it's really not a good project, and it is not a successful project. If at some point, so I give you an example. If at some point, let me finish mine. If at some point, the clients don't become the whole and soul sort of, the entirely those own the project, or it becomes own, not literally like in terms of as property or something, but as ideas. I mean, so recently what happened is we had done something and we had to, so the clients wanted to see, so we said, we can do this panel and put it like that. And she said, can we go and see this somewhere? So I said, yeah, there's a project and we've done this kind of a panel and we've put it like this, we'll go. So I called up these old clients and I said, I want to bring some clients. They said, come, we are at home. So we went to see this project. Now, the funny thing is I went there and they got something to drink and all of that. Then we are sitting there and then I said, let's have a look at this. Before I could say anything, the client, she started explaining the project. She said, suddenly I was quite happy that, and she is explaining this like, and it's a great thing. Wow. It's a great thing. Listen, if they don't feel like this, they will not maintain, they will not care for it.
Correct.
It has to be their thing. And they have to take over this thing, and it kind of, and she's explaining that, this one we were thinking like this, pachi amne em thayu ke ahiyathi aam thai jase, to pachi we took this one.
So
and I said, it's all the stuff we were telling her when the project was going on, and she wasn't convinced. Now see, the whole cycle has turned around, and she's kind of now explaining this as the original set of ideas that she had. This is wonderful. This is really good and doesn't happen all the time. They sometimes. Yeah, whatever. But this is the thing. It's good for you also. It's good to get over projects and do other projects.
Correct.
And you don't want to be stuck with like a project, or even if it has done well or it has gotten you some appreciation. Ultimately, wo past hai na.
Say, I mean that is.
So you want to
just let go and then next project.
It can be very easily, you can get caught in its clutches. So.
Okay, so sir, I think that's it. Thank you so much for coming.
Really nice talking to you, man.
But before we let you go, hopefully this podcast eventually gets very popular and people listen to it. And koi client ne tamne reach out karu hai for their residence, how do they get in contact with you?
They can always write to us, which is
from your website.
From the website.
Okay, good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.